They don't really want tweaks to their website. They want more customer activity. And so we started introducing
Our approach was one in which and what that's allowed us to do is to scale and create lots of volume in terms of the services and the clients we offer with.
We grew that from 0 to 200 clients in about 2 or 3 months.
This is simple stuff, and you're going to be like, oh, I could just do that, and they'll still buy it, and they'll probably buy it for more, and they'll probably stay longer. Really?
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. I'm super blessed to be joined by Mike and AJ from Agency Coach. And I was telling Mike before the call, this is a full circle moment for me, because when I was 2 months into my agency, just dropped out of college, thought I was the bee's knees, but actually didn't know anything, joined a webinar that they had for a software that they had and still have at the time that helps local businesses get reviews, and basically like the OG, it's not a white label, sort of like a gray label, but you can only join through the agencies. And I didn't, confession time, didn't really end up using it, except for a few. I did actually with a few clients, and it was awesome, like worked like a charm. But I just had better success like direct pitching, and that worked well for us. So, and then we found high level, and it was like, I don't know if I really need both of these, but super excited for that reason. Guys, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Keaton, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, super excited to be here.
So why don't we rewind to like 2003, was it, Mike? I saw you posted like Anchorwave celebrating its 20th birthday.
Yeah.
Or 21st birthday.
21. 21.
Yeah, that's insane. I'm 26, so like I was 5.
That's insane. That makes me feel a tad old, man. Yeah.
I didn't mean it like that. I just mean that you have way more knowledge than I do, so I'm excited to learn from you. But
yeah, we're like the grandpas when it comes to agencies, I guess you could say. For sure.
How did you get started? What was how did you get your first client, and what was the idea behind the marketing agency?
Yeah, so I started our agency, Anchorwave Internet Solutions, in 2003, shortly before graduating from the university. And it was very strategic why I did it, because I still am in Tucson, Arizona, where I went to school here. And if I didn't have a plan, I was going back to California, but I was dating a girl, I was playing in a band, and I'm like, this is where home is. So I got to figure out the job situation. So I did what I knew how to do, which was, at the time, I was a web designer, but there were really no prospects in 2003 in Tucson, Arizona, for a web designer to go get like a job someplace. Certainly if I moved back to Southern California, to LA, there would have been something there for me. So I did the next best thing, which was to start a business doing that. The encouragement of my dad, he's like, yeah, go ahead, join the Chamber of Commerce, go talk to people and build websites for them. So he was super supportive of that. But you think about like what was going on back then, 2003, that was a land before Google being reigning supreme of search engines. It was like Alta Vista or Yahoo or something like that. Facebook wasn't a thing. YouTube wasn't a thing. We weren't carrying around smartphones in our pockets. So it's a very different world. And so it really was, I didn't consider myself an agency owner. That wasn't even a thing. I was a web designer building websites for folks. And so that's what happened, is that those first couple of years was just figuring out who needed websites and building those things. And as the years kind of went on, digital marketing became a word that we started to use, and where people were wanting more than just building a website. They were understanding how the marketing that had been done traditionally was actually moving online. And that's about the time 2008 or so is when AJ and I met, and we kind of teamed up to build out our digital marketing department. So we still own our web design and digital marketing agency, Anchorwave. You can look us up. But we don't work in it day to day. So fast forward to the end of 2020, we handed the reins over to that business to our CEO and president, Lily Darling and Jill King. And they run that business day to day using the same operating system that we teach inside of Agency Coach, to teach agencies how to grow monthly recurring revenue greater than expenses, so they can have financial freedom and use that financial freedom to create time freedom, and ultimately own their agency so they can own their lives.
Love it. So those first 5 years were just sort of a like freelance. Mike's a freelancer building websites.
Yeah, no doubt. Showing up, I'm like, hey, you need a website? Cool, I can do that for you.
Okay.
I would do it. Sometimes I would mess it up. Sometimes I would charge enough. Sometimes I wouldn't. And just kind of figuring it out bit by bit.
Cool. And so how did you guys meet, and what was the brainchild that you put together, and how did things evolve from 2008 onward?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because Mike actually tricked me into applying to work at AnchorWave. He was looking for a salesperson, which in my mind, I was not that, right? I was working at Intuit, managing the online communities for like Quicken and QuickBooks and TurboTax. And I knew a lot about web strategy. And the ad that he put out there was for a web strategist. And at that time, working in a big corporate environment, I felt like a very small cog in this huge machine and not really sure like where I really fit in and what impact I was having. And I was eager to work in a smaller company where I could really like understand how the work that I was doing was affecting people. So I'm like, web strategist, I could do that all day. I can give people a web strategy, and ended up taking the job with Mike, and he's like, hey, gives me a list of all the people that he's built a website for. And it was like, call these people and just like, see if they want anything else. See if there's like recommendations you have on their site or different things that we can do. And, that worked really, really well. And, I was just looking at people's sites, telling them improvements they could make and asking if they had any changes. And eventually I'm like, why am I fixing all this stuff on the backside? Like, why don't I just like sell the website on the front end and like do it the right way so that, it's taking into account all the things that I was trying to fix on the back end. And, it didn't take long for, me to really take over the sales for AnchorWave. And, we eventually grew this into a team of 20 plus people, built 1,500 plus websites, managed hundreds and hundreds of digital marketing campaigns, and, eventually felt like we slayed the dragons here at the agency. We wanted to do more, and, the coaching model, expert type business, seemed like a great fit for us.
Nice. So you mentioned you were going back to all the people and you just resold them another website. You were like, hey, the last website we built for you wasn't that good. You need a better one. Was that some of
that, but some of it was like incremental changes too.
Okay.
Right. And then that's what eventually led to, well, they don't really want tweaks to their website. They want more customer activity. And so we started introducing SEO, and we started introducing Facebook ads and social media and different other offerings that were all in service to helping them get more customer activity in their business. And that's when things really started to take off, because like Mike said, digital marketing services are great because they're recurring, right? And for a long, long time, we're a web design agency that was chasing big one-time projects. But guess what? Like, we just had to keep doing that over and over and over. And that cycle really never ends. And it wasn't until we realized that, most of the money that was coming into our agency was coming from the smaller digital marketing clients that were just paying us $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 a month, that we realized, geez, we need to focus all of our attention on recurring revenue. And that's what eventually created a business that we could basically hand over to our CEO to run, without our involvement.
Got it. I think what's super fascinating about what you guys built is that it's unniched. You've never, as far as I know, tried to niche, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And not niched on the service either. I was just listening to something today from two people that I 100% respect their opinion, also respect your guys' opinion. And they were saying, don't get into custom work. You're just going to shoot yourself in the foot. It's going to be terrible. Like, as simple as possible. And you guys have basically done the opposite and obviously been very successful. What would you say to somebody at the beginning of their journey? Like, what should they be looking at here?
But it's funny you say that, because like I 100% agree with that advice, and I think we found our own way of doing that. Because like, quite honestly, I thought there was gonna be this moment in time where like I was gonna be like, this is the industry we're going after. This is how we're gonna niche down. And it was like all become clear. And I was like waiting for that moment. Like I would see other local competitors that were like kind of doing it the way we were doing it. And then they would like, all right, now they're like focusing in on self-storage units, and they're like the kings and queens of self-storage digital marketing. But there was never that client where I was like, I want to be that guy. Like I'm good. The thought, honestly, and no disrespect to those guys, of going to the self-storage conference just sounded like, I mean, not what I wanted to do at all. I kind of felt bad about it. Honestly, I was like, oh, what am I doing? And what I realized is that, gosh, there's more than one way to niche down, right? Like you can certainly pick an industry and do that. And lots of people have success doing that. Our approach was one in which we decided how deep we were going to go on services, right? And so like you could be a custom agency doing lots of fancy boutique type services and one of a kind snowflake things, right? But that's not appealing because everything being different over and over again. So what we did is we created agency productized recipes where like we have very specific ways in which we deliver Facebook ads or SEO or building a website. And those are the criteria by which we sell it, right? So we have to sell it that way, but then we have to deliver it the same way. And what that's allowed us to do is to scale and create lots of volume in terms of the services and the clients we offer without having to go a very particular industry. And the side kind of beautiful thing is like people don't know this from looking on the outside, but our own agency actually does niche down in lots of different industries. Like people would never know that we have a huge concentration of veterinary clinics. Right. Wow. And so we go deep on that, but we don't have to be the guys who have, hats that say we're the veterinary guys and t-shirts that show up at those conferences. Like we have the ability to dive into those verticals without necessarily branding ourselves as that. And it gives us a lot of flexibility. So for the folks who are out there listening, like I was feeling bad that we hadn't chosen an industry and every, guru this way and that way is saying, you got to do this, you got to do this. Like they're not wrong. Right. But just understand that's not the only way to do it. And once I just gave myself that permission to be like, hey, we don't have to go as deep with these clients. We don't have to go as complex, but we could still scale that way and be very specific about what we're delivering. The world opened up, and that's what led to us building lots of recurring revenue that way.
Okay. So would an example of that I've heard you talk about in the past perhaps would be your Facebook billboard ad strategy.
Exactly.
Where instead of going like, we're going to build the ultimate Facebook ads strategy, you guys just say, we're going to make sure you show up locally and it's $600 a month, or I don't know how much you guys are charging now, but I'd love to hear more about that because it's something that stuck with me. Like the minute I heard it, because the story you tell of like the orthodontic, I was in the orthodontic niche and the orthodontic front desk lady who's like, you hired me to manage this office, not to be a salesperson. Everybody's dealt with that.
Right.
So what's the billboard ad strategy?
Well, we did go deep into Facebook ads and lead gen strategies and tried to niche down a couple different times. Orthodontics was one of them. Real estate and mortgage was another one. And, what we found is that when we were going after the orthodontist, we were doing a great job, right? We were getting them leads for super cheap on our end that we were able to sell for a lot on their end. We had a great strategy for getting orthodontists on board and delivering those. But then we kept getting people who were wanted to cancel, right? And we're getting the same type of thing. I don't understand. We're giving you what we promised, this number of leads that we promised, and you're wanting to cancel because they're not converting. And what we ended up finding is that most of these orthodontist offices don't have what you would consider to be a salesperson, right? They've got a receptionist that's used to getting calls and scheduling appointments, but not one that you're going to hand a list of leads and be like, hey, work these leads. And so, time and time again, when we started digging into it, we found that, who we would call Peggy, right? That's kind of the name we gave this persona, which is what we would see, that old lady on Monsters, Inc. That's how we kind of pictured her. That's how she sounded. And, and it's like, Peggy, did you call the leads? Well, I sent them an email, or, she called once and left them a voicemail. And if you've done any type of sales with colder leads, you've got to stay on those, right? These people expressed the desire to come in and get their kid checked for braces. And all you did was send them an email and balls in their court waiting for it to come back, right? And so we were like, well, we don't want to go teach all the Peggies in the world how to sell. That seemed like a crazy idea. So we're like, what's another industry where they already try really hard to sell and they have good sales techniques? And so that's when we went into real estate. And, that was working really, really well too. We grew that from 0 to 200 clients in about 2 or 3 months. But what we didn't understand was that we didn't know anything about that industry or niche. And Facebook ads we were producing for at the time, $3 to $5 each. We were selling for $35, making a killing. And we're like, oh, this is it. We found what we were wanting to do for a really long time. And then December hit. And apparently in a lot of parts of the country, real estate kind of shuts down during the winter, because it's snowing and people aren't out there looking for houses. And we didn't have a good enough pulse on the ad spend that we were spending and the cost per lead. We were kind of looking back at the end of each month instead of like actively monitoring it because we had so many. And what we found at the end of December was not only had we spent all the money, we didn't have the guaranteed leads. And so we put ourselves in a pretty bad spot, multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, that we had to kind of pay back for refunds to people. And, it was just really one of the worst experiences as an agency owner that we've been in. But we decided at that point, like maybe this lead gen stuff and niching down isn't where we want to go, because the truth is we didn't know enough about it. Like I think there are certain cases where, I've seen like a chiropractor who learns how to market, and now, he loves chiropractors and he loves the lingo and talk, and now he's going to serve those people. I think that's amazing. But I think if you're just picking an industry because you think there's money there, there's some risk in that, you could make a mistake like this.
And the day the Amazon box arrived with my books that were Mortgage Brokers for Dummies and The Idiot's Guide to Mortgage Brokers, I was like, what am I doing? I'm like, I'm chasing the money, right?
Yeah.
I'm not chasing, the transformation and the people that we love. And like, I think AJ, telling the story about the bus bench ad coming down.
Yeah. Yeah. So you would think we would learn our lesson and not do lead gen, but we didn't learn our lesson. We just said, we're not going to do lead gen for a specific niche. We'll do it for our local clients here in Tucson. Okay. And so we had a company that we're working with as a financial advisor company. And same thing, we're producing tons and tons of leads. It's exactly what he asked us to do. And he keeps telling every month I got to go back out there and kind of resell him on letting us do another month, because he's like, oh, the leads suck. And the sales guys are saying, that their numbers don't work. And like, then we call all the numbers and all of them work. So it's just like, it's one of those things where it's like always a different story. Right. And, I kept him going for probably 3 or 4 months, convincing him that, it was going to get better, and we were working on it. The quality of leads would go up and whatnot. And then finally one time he's like, look, AJ, I know you guys are doing great work, but I'm done. I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. It's not producing the result I want. I feel like I'm wasting money. And so we split ways. And I remember about a month later, I'm driving down the street, I start seeing all these bus bench ads with this guy's face on it. And that's what he did. He took the money that he was investing with us and instead decided to double down on bus bench ads all over the place, which was like, I can't believe this guy. Like, we were giving him quality leads, like people filling out full applications, and then he cancels us to put a bus bench ad up. And I was like, I remember going into the office to Mike. I'm like, dude, you're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe what this guy did. Yeah. And so in that moment, I was like, but what's funny is that that's what they're used to buying, right? They're used to buying awareness, and they're willing to invest in that, because guess what? Every day that he goes to work, he's cruising by there and he feels good knowing that all these cars driving by are seeing his brand and seeing his face. Same thing with a billboard. Same thing with radio.
Scratching that like different itch. That's like,
exactly.
I am cool. Not necessarily I'm killing it with my marketing. People know who I am.
And you know what? There's a place for that stuff, right? Like, but that stuff exists and it helps with branding, but it's not direct response like the world that we came from. And that was the thing we had to change in our mind, that, okay, like you mentioned before, like $600 a month, like what can we really do for $600 a month? Like, we can't do in-depth lead generation and like, constantly split testing landing pages and ads like that. There's not enough juice there to actually like do the work required to create good leads. Also bear in mind, like we were in a point in time, the amount of automation and texting and phone calls and AI and stuff, that wasn't a thing yet. And so like, certainly things have changed for that side of things now. But for us, what we realized is like, listen, these guys want to pay for awareness. Well, let's give them the awareness, right? And if they want lead generation, well, then we can upgrade them into a package level that really can give us the space to actually do that level of work. But what we found was that the clients that moved into this awareness-based, advertising were happy with it. And for their station in the world, it was getting them the level of results that they were expecting, right? It was helping them convert better the leads that were already coming their way, right? Because it makes sense. If I'm doing retargeting ads for a business that already has lead flow coming in, when I'm running retargeting ads, all that's doing is helping create more top of mind awareness and helping the conversion of stuff that's already coming their way. So is that worth $600 a month? Heck yeah. Mm-hmm. Totally.
Exactly. Yeah. They're definitely not questioning the bus bench ad company. Hey, how many leads did that produce? Right. They're just happy with the amount of impressions that they're getting or being reported on. So that's what we did. We said, hey, our reporting completely changed. We're not reporting on leads. We're reporting on how many people saw your ad, saw your face. And once we did that, guess what? We reported on how many people saw it monthly, and then cumulative since we started doing this whole campaign. And they just see that number get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they feel good about it. And it's like, why not give people what they want to buy and what they're used to buying? We're the ones trying to sell them on this other thing. And most of the small businesses that we work with, they just don't have the internal systems and sales processes and sales teams to handle that type of lead.
Yeah. And for every agency that's gone in and promised the world, there's 10 clients who literally just wanted to show up. Like they just wanted a little more exposure,
Yeah.
Yeah. So how many clients do you guys have on the billboard ads model, and what's your average ticket on that, both on ad spend and your fee?
Yeah. So, I mean, at this point, our agency's built about $200K in recurring revenue per month in digital marketing services. And so we bundle in Facebook ads and that kind of thing with the packages that we do. But when we're aiming for the that package, we're trying to, you mentioned $600 before. Like that's a really easy number to pitch to a client, right? Because it's not a crazy number for most businesses out there. So they're not putting a lot of weight on it, but it also is giving them, it's one piece of the puzzle, right? And I think that's the mistake I think a lot of agencies make going out there is they put so much on one service or one thing. And this was really popular a handful of years ago when everyone was teaching Facebook ads, as an agency, hey, launch your Facebook ads agency. Well, it's if all you have is this one tool to accomplish the thing, if that tool doesn't work in this scenario, you get fired, right? But if you have a collection of services working together, and that's the reality, Facebook ads by themselves are great, but they work better when they're paired with other things. When you have a great reputation, when you have a great site and great funnels and great, SEO, they're all working together. But agencies get fired all the time because they come in with this one specific skill set and they're like, here's what it is. And when it doesn't work or when there's a bump or it doesn't go as fast, the client gets cranky. You have no way to tactic switch and no way to layer on other ingredients to help this thing work.
Yeah. Right? And you tend to when it's a nail that you need to give and the only thing you have is a hammer. Exactly. Maybe it's not a nail that you need to actually hammer in, but you only have the hammer. You're just going to keep selling the hammer.
Right.
And
and then agencies overcompensate when they realize what you're saying, right? And they overcompensate, and instead of just bringing a nice size, toolbox, nothing crazy, just a nice size one, they go and feel like they got to show up with a whole Home Depot at their store. Hey, listen, I have everything here that you need, client, right? So there's two extremes. There's I only got a hammer, and then there's I got a Home Depot on the other side. It's the agencies that win are the ones that have a good toolbox, a good package of things that they can layer in, layer out, and bring in the right tools. And it's and there's a lot of pressure, I think, for, because we've been on both sides of those equations. When I'm getting fired because the leads suck, and I realize it's because I sold it that way. It's oh, dang, of course I was the one telling them how amazing it's going to be. Oh my gosh, yes, of course I'm an expert and I work with people in your thing all the time. And it's it's the story gets played out. We've all heard of those agencies or been those agencies sometimes. And it's it's no wonder your churn is so high. You reach this ceiling of recurring revenue. You're can't get past it,
Yeah. It's amazing how just a couple tweaks in positioning can allow you to sell something for so much more or allow the same price for something with much lower expectations.
Right. It's often us that show up with the high expectations. Like we feel like in order for me to justify this much that I'm going to charge this client, I've got to include this and this and this and this. And so we were in this constant state of like over delivery, right? Even when the client didn't need it. I mean, that's why the whole idea behind like a minimum effective dose and minimum viable product comes in. It's like, the story we tell in our community all the time is like, imagine if you're getting your house painted and like you paid the guy to do 3 coats. We're going to spray it, we're going to roll it, and we're going to spray it again, right? But you show up and he's like, all right, Mike, I just finished the 10th coat. And you're like, what are you talking about? We talked about 3. I ain't paying for the extra 7 coats. I just wanted to make sure that everything was good, right? It's like, that'd be a ridiculous thing for a painter to do, to add extra coats when it's unnecessary. But agencies do it all the time. We do extra SEO. We do extra revisions on things. We feel like we have to do more and more and more and more to justify our own existence, to make up for the fact that you sold them this hammer, of a thing and it's not working. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's frustrating.
Man, it's such a contrarian view that's so common sense. Like it's funny that it's contrarian.
Right. Right. I think most things in business are like, business is pretty simple when you really break it down. We just tend to complicate things.
Yeah. So what other examples do you guys have of things like Facebook billboard ads that are minimum effective doses, but for SEO or Google ads or whatever else? So I think there's a lot of people listening who, and I've given this advice before, like just start out with one thing because you're going to get overwhelmed if you're a beginner, which I think is true.
Yep.
But when they're maybe starting to get their legs under them a little bit, I have a certain client in mind right now. He's got like 7 clients. He's like, should I layer on SEO? What should I sell it for?
Right.
Is it worth trying to do the upsell, or should I just stick to the one program? I'm interested in your opinion on that transition, first of all, and then also what are those minimum effective doses for the other services that you guys provide?
Yeah. For those of you guys listening, like get a paper out, because it's like, this is simple stuff. And you're going to be like, oh, I could just do that. And they'll still buy it, and they'll probably buy it for more, and they'll probably stay longer. Like, really? So cool. So there's a lot of services, right? So I'll try and go fast. Websites. Okay. Are you asking them what they want, or are you telling them what needs to be there? Right. Very simple, right? Be prescriptive, right? For those guys have seen any of our stuff with Russell Brunson and Funnel Hub, just Google it, or, if you go to funnelhublaunchpad.com, there's a training or an interview we did with Russell about the topic. But the whole premise is of breaking it down very simple, that I'm going so deep, is know what pages exist on a site, and then have wireframes for what needs to be there. And rather than giving the client the opportunity to say what they need, you tell them what needs to be there, and you have justification for why that's there. Like how many ways can you design an About Us page? Right? Not that many. So why are you asking them what they want? Be like, here's what goes in an About Us page. That sound good? Cool. All right. Now with ChatGPT, boom, content's done. I'm going to send a photographer over. We're going to get 18 photos of your office and you sitting there. That'll be enough, and we'll be done. Right? Websites. Right? That's minimum effective dose. Website projects can be the most burdensome, time-intensive projects, and they don't have to be.
Especially with how much ego is wrapped up in a website.
And
that's
the
like
thing I'd add to
ego marketing thing.
Go ahead. The thing I'd add to that point is just we used to do a lot of custom stuff on WordPress too. We build a plugin and we do all these crazy things because a client asked for it. And eventually we're like, no, we don't do those things. We work with these few plugins that are like pretty big plugins that accomplish a lot of things. If they want something outside of that, we found somebody that does want that type of work, and we're like, we'll handle the site, and you can go to this other guy for this. And so that's another, it's being willing to say no to what we call the snowflake projects, right? Or the pieces of it that are snowflake. And that's how we've niched down, and that's how we've kept it to that minimum.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So like pay-per-click, it's just like, what does a local business need? They need, at a minimum, they're like core areas of keywords, right? What are like the obvious ones? And then who are their competitors? Can we run competitor campaigns? Right? Like, could we be more fancy than that? Yes. But should we start there? That's a great spot, right?
Yeah.
Just zeroing in on that, right?
You've done 80% of the work with two services in a competitor campaign.
Exactly. Like, why are we spending so much time trying to make this other campaign work that's like doesn't make up, it's like such a small part of their business, or it's highly competitive, right? SEO is kind of the same thing. It's like, what are we really optimizing for, and what are we trying to do? And yes, there's lots of long tail out there we can go get, and yes, there's these edge cases, but let's just go after the key things. Local SEO, same idea. It's like there's I love local SEO because there's it's all very administrative in nature, right? Like, there's not, like, everyone wants to pretend like SEO is like this like magical thing, but there's just some very basic key things. Making sure that your citations are in order, making sure your site's indexable, making sure that your Google business profile is fully fleshed out and like active. Like some of those basic things, like, maybe in a super competitive market, it might be tough, but like for most businesses, like those are the common sense things. The analogy we use all the time is like, it's brushing your teeth, right? Like when you leave the dentist, they tell you to do two things: brush your teeth and floss. Right. And if you do that, you can reasonably expect to have good oral health the next time you come in. Well, you know what? Most businesses aren't doing the basics. They're not brushing and flossing. Right. And so what are those basics? Having good reviews, having a good Google business profile, having a converting website. Right. Whereas these other agencies come in with like this whiz bang strategy. It's like, no. Let's just do the basics really, really well. Reviews would be another category of things that's really easy to offer, really bite sized. And you mentioned it earlier, Keaton. It's like, getting your foot in the door with a very key, packageable product where it's, hey, I'm going to help you get more 5-star reviews, and I'm going to be your review manager, and you're going to pay me to do that. And like, we can high five every month because we know that if we ask your real clients for reviews, then some of them are going to do that, and we're going to continue to see that build. Right. And so like, that's another example of a product you can have that's very administrative in nature. Right. So you said before, like, well, how do you scale up if you're doing all these custom things? Well, yeah, you can. These aren't custom. They're very like, there's an SOP for exactly how to help somebody with reviews. And if client wants it to be different, like AJ said before, no, we don't do it that way. I mean, we're very nice about it. And if they really want it some different way, then we also show them very kindly the door and the person on the other side of the door that can do that for them. And I'd say in most cases, clients ask for stuff just because they feel like they have to. And when they're told no, they're like, oh, okay. Right. But old Mike would be like, oh, dang, they're mad. They're upset. They're going to cancel. And I had a client one time, sorry, this is a distraction, but I had a client one time. She said, Mike, I love working with you because you never say no. Like, you always figure out a way to make it work. And I'm like patting myself on the back. I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. Not realizing that strength was also overused, became a weakness. I'm like, I was saying yes to everything. And I was like, causing myself grief because I was unwilling to say no to things. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, it's saying no easier. Yes. Recurring revenue. If you have a ton of recurring revenue paying you every single month, you can say no to things.
So true.
So if you feel like pressured to say yes to things right now, you probably don't have enough recurring revenue. So let's go fix that first.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Yeah, it's so beautiful when I sort of lean into this frame of like, my whole thing's like, become a dominator, dominate your industry, dominate your market. And dominators do not like cave. They're the people prescribing, they're the people telling you what to do. Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And it's sadly a point that I don't think a lot of agency owners ever reach, because they're too busy trying to bend over backward for the 20% of clients that are going to ask for the world and still be upset at the end of the month. Yeah, great. Thanks for that, guys. So let's talk a little bit about acquisition, because I think you guys have some really good stuff there. And also like pricing and framing, because it sounds like, and I've heard you talk about this before, but you do a lot of like lead selling versus retainers, if I'm not wrong. And so I'd love to talk about the difference in the pitch between a retainer and hey, here's how we're going to price this per lead. And then talk to us about how you got your clients. What's the process there?
Cool. Yeah. So just a small shift to what you said. So the selling per lead was definitely a big thing that we were doing in the past. And We've definitely moved away from that because it's an unrealistic expectation. If you like gambling and uncertainty and risk, then sell per lead. That's what we were doing, and we screwed up, and we almost put ourselves out of business because of it. Like, I guess I could say we're pretty strongly against that at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm always open up to new ideas, but I will say that we are actually like kind of the anti-retainer guys. Retainers is a very common thing in our industry, right? Like, it's very, like, people just do it. But it's just another version of trading your time for money. AJ and I believe it's like you deserve to be paid based off of the value that you provide and not the time that it takes. And so when you charge for a retainer, right, you're usually, and there's different versions or definitions of this, but let's just assume that the definition of a retainer is I'm going to give you money every month and you're going to do work and you're going to take, credits or hours or something away from this retainer. So we don't have to have the discussion around like what you're doing. It's just like whatever I need, you're going to pull from that pool of resources to cover that thing, right? That's my perspective on retainers. And when you do that, what you're doing is you're still trading your time for money. And when you're charging hourly, because that's essentially what you're doing there, there's no incentive for you to be better or faster, right? Because the better you are, the faster you are. The faster you are, the less time it takes. The less time it takes, the less money you charge. Right. So you can see that it's a race to the bottom when you're charging that way. So we've built a lot of our digital marketing packages as kind of bundles that, here's the investment for this piece of it. Okay. You're like we said before, $600 a month for Facebook billboard and boomerang ads. Okay. That's that component. And we're going to stack on all these other services. Right. So if it takes me 8 minutes to deliver that service, and I'm not saying it does, but like if it did, doesn't matter, is because the deliverable is what matters, not the time that it took.
Yeah.
I think hourly charging and retainer based charging is very easy for folks to start with, because it's just like, it helps them to avoid the real thing, which is they're afraid to sell. Right. Hey, how about we just put a retainer of, I don't know, let's call it. I had a friend of mine come to me recently. He's like, I sold this retainer. I told him not to, but he's like, I sold this retainer, and I told him we're going to do $1,000 this month, and then we're going to scale it up. We're going to do 1,200, and then 15, and then 2,000. I'm like, for what? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But it made him feel good because he like in his mind he sold a $2,000 retainer because he asked for $1,000 one right now. I'm like, like, you're avoiding the issue, which is you're scared to sell, and you're scared to get into the specifics of what you're delivering, and because here's what's going to happen: you sell the retainer, you're going to deliver some kind of work. And at some point, the client's going to be like, well, I don't think you're working hard enough for that, right? Because 3 months ago, you were working your ass off for that big launch we had. Now you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs, but I'm still paying you the same amount. Not realizing in that a couple months ago, you were working your butt off and doing more work than you were getting paid for. And now you're like making up for it. Like, it just, the clients don't love retainers, like, in my opinion. So don't sell retainers, sell based off of value.
Yeah. What are your packages look like, or what would you recommend generally to somebody who's trying to move towards this minimum viable packages but wants to stack the recurring revenue?
Yeah, I mean it comes down to, what does it cost you to deliver? I think that's the first thing you got to figure out, because I could spout out like, here's what we charge for this and here's what we charge for that. I think people put too much weight into like what it's supposed to be or what other people are charging. And yes, there's market constraints for sure, but I think they play far less of an impact than people realize. So I think it starts with figuring out, what does it cost you to deliver this service? If you're doing Facebook ads, it's like, okay, what is the time involved and the cost, even though it might be you doing it right now, if you're just getting started, like, what would it cost you to have somebody else do that work? Right.
To great, like,
and do it well.
Future,
because eventually you shouldn't be doing it. That's part of the trap that people have, right? That they sell the work and then they don't charge enough, and they can't afford. They don't want to give it away, because now I'm like, oh no, I'm going to give it to AJ and he's going to do work. I'm going to pay him to do it. And now where's my money, right? Like, or he doesn't want to do it for what I want to pay. So understanding like, what would it take, and then, oftentimes we'll look at that number and realize that the time it takes for them to do the work isn't the whole story, right? You got insurance, you got lights, you got taxes, you got like slow months you got to make up for. You've got, your own things, right? And so when we look at that cost, we also have to factor in, like, is there project management time that's happening? And then we could really get a real key understanding of that. And then what most people will do, even if they did that work, is they'll be like, I got it. I'm going to double it. That sounds good. That sounds great. Okay. AJ's charging me $30 an hour. It's going to take him 3 hours. And so, it's $90. And so, let's call it, an extra $10 for my management, $100, and let's double it. All right. $200 is my rate, The only one winning in that scenario is AJ, right? So it's like, you have to look at multiples of that, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 times your cost, right? To be able to build that in. And, that scares some people, right? To think, okay, well, what am I doing to provide more value, right? Like it's 10 times. I'm going to charge them $2,000 a month, right? That sounds crazy. It's like, that's there. If you're going to build a real business, have stability, you have to charge enough to cover your business operations. Because one day you're going to retire. One day you're going to sell this thing. Like, the day to start thinking about how your business is going to run is right now. But we work with a lot of agency owners like you do, where they're not thinking that far ahead. They're just in that moment right now. Yeah. And you might love your business now. You might love building websites. You might love digital marketing, but at some point, you should get a raise and you should be able to have this thing run without you. And you're going to retire, like you're going to die, and this thing is going to go somewhere else. So do you want it to be worth something? Do you want it to, be an asset, or do you want it just to evaporate and become a liability for your family after you're gone?
Yeah.
So that's why.
Yeah. What did the majority, especially in the most recent years, like I know you guys aren't as involved in the agency now, but I assume you guys are still selling new clients at AnchorWave, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is the process? Like, what's the discovery and pitch process based on the services that you guys provide? And what do most people come in on as far as the packages?
Yeah. So our sales process is a 2-step sales process that revolves around what we call the playbook, which you could say is just a proposal, right? What we've found over time, and like I mentioned in the story earlier, there was a point where we decided we didn't really want to go for upfront fixed bid websites, right? We wanted to really focus in on the digital marketing. And so we had so many people though that were coming to us for websites, right? And we were like, well, how do we take somebody that's coming to us for a website and then sell them on digital marketing? Like, don't we need to do the website first? And so that was kind of the genesis for this whole process. Cause it's like, well, maybe if we assessed where they're at, we can make the case for why they don't need a website and they need these other things. And so, the 2-step sales process is broken up into what we call an initial discussion, which is all, like a discovery call. We're really diving deep to understand what it is that this person wants, right? Because I don't care if it's somebody that reached out to me because they went to a conference and somebody said they needed social media. Like, I'm still going to have an initial discussion to understand, well, why do you want that, right? Like, why do you want social media? And more times than not, it's because they want more customer activity. And if that's the case, there's other ways that we can go about doing that that'll make that happen quicker, right? And so in that discovery call, I'm trying to understand their goals. I'm trying to understand what their business is about, because what's going to happen next is I'm going to go do an assessment on their online presence. And so we essentially, in that playbook process, when we come back, we walk them through our framework, which includes, a marketing foundation. Their marketing foundation is going to be all the things that lend to their credibility, right? It's their website, it's their reviews, it's making sure they at least have their Google business profile set up. And then we're going to talk to them about active searchers. And so we present, cool, once we've got the marketing foundation in place, we'll move on to active searchers. And I like to tell this story about, like a pool company. There's certain people that woke up this morning and they said, you know what, it's hot here in Tucson, and, I'm not going to deal with another summer like this. I'm going to go get a pool. They're going to go search online for a pool builder to come give them a quote and hopefully get that thing going. And those people are great because they're hot buyers, right? They've got money in hand. They're just looking for the right person to do it. And so it only makes sense that you'd go after the people that are actually looking for you first, right? Mm-hmm. The problem is there's only so many people that woke up with that intention this morning, right? It's like the tip of the iceberg. But guess what? There's a whole heck of a lot of homeowners in Tucson that would love a pool, They just don't have that intention today, right? Maybe it's because they don't think they can afford it and they don't know the financing options. Maybe they haven't seen like a before and after picture similar to their backyard and they thought their yard was too small and it wouldn't look good. Or maybe they thought it was a long drawn out process and you explain the process. And any one of those things could be the thing that turns them from somebody that wanted a pool to really wanting a pool, right? And wanting one now. And so those are what we call our passive prospects. So when we walk somebody, a business owner, through this and say, cool, so this is what we want to do for you. We want to make sure that you look credible first, right? Then we want to go after the people that are looking for you. Then we want to go after the people that aren't looking for you. Does that make sense? And they're like, yeah, that makes total sense, right? And I know it sounds pretty basic to you, but like for somebody who doesn't know a lot about digital marketing, they're like, yeah, let's do it. And the beautiful part about it is like, I haven't necessarily told them how we're going to go about doing that. All I've asked them to do is buy into that framework, right? Mm-hmm. And once they buy into that framework, now I say, cool. Well, the way that we build credibility is like making sure your site looks good. Like, haven't you ever gone to a website and it opens up and you immediately are clicking out of there because it looks like some high school kid built it, right? Like, your reviews, like, do you have good reviews? That's another way that we can build credibility. And then we move into active searchers. Well, there's only two ways we can get in front of people that are looking for you. It's pay-per-click or it's SEO, right? Which one do you want? So if you're saying that you want to go after people that are looking for you, then you need to choose one or both of these services. Then once we've got that, let's get in front of the people that aren't looking for you. Facebook ads, that's where the billboard ads come in. This is where Google billboard ads come in. And so it really breaks down. Like, now they understand, like, okay, they came to us because they want more customers. We help them to see a framework that can make that happen, that makes sense in their mind, right? And now I'm going to assess you in each one of those areas to determine where you need help. Because guess what? Maybe your marketing foundation is good. Maybe you have a good amount of reviews, and maybe you already have a decent website. We can skip that and just go straight into pay-per-click or SEO, right? And so we assess them on all those areas, and educating them about what's important in each one. And by the end of that, they're feeling really good because they understand what's important. They understand how they're doing. They can clearly see the gaps. And then we make a recommendation on which one of those things we want to tackle. So every client's going to be different, but it's kind of like Legos, right? It's like, cool, for you, we're going to do reviews and local SEO and pay-per-click. For you, we're just going to do billboard ads, right? Or whatever the recommendation is. But the idea is that, eventually they're going to getting all those services, right? Because they all kind of stack on top of one another and support one another. And so that's how we've been able to get larger, monthly agreements with clients, because we've given them the opportunity to buy more things at once. It used to be a time where, I'd go out there and first thing I'm going to sell every time is a website, right? And then once we're done with that, I'm going to go back out there and I'm going to go with one other service that I think they might need. They might need SEO, right? Cool. Maybe they took up on it, maybe not. Well, next time I'm going to go out there in 3 months and I'm going to pitch Facebook ads, right? And so nobody's ever going to buy all the stuff you have to offer if you don't give them the opportunity to do so. And then they don't know like all the services that you offer. And so the playbook has been like, yeah, go ahead.
So we call that playing proposal roulette. It's like, which one am I showing up with today?
Yeah. Right. And the beautiful part about it is when you lay this out, there's what we call, the first class offer, right? There's always the biggest one on there that I put on that's really a lot of times just there to kind of scare them. So the one that I really want them to buy looks more reasonable. But sometimes you'll get that person that, they're the first class air guy. They drive the best cars. They have the best everything. And they're like, yeah, I want the best that you've got. And so that's how you get big agreements. And so that's something that we've brought to our students at Agency Coach, people that we're selling one-off $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 websites, and then maybe some, digital marketing after that, to pulling off $40,000 agreements in one sale, $60,000 agreements, $20,000 agreements in one pop. Obviously that makes a huge, huge difference in their ability to grow and scale.
Very cool.
And just like on the big side, like you can also look at the small end of things too. Like there's some clients who aren't ready for the first class offers, but like, what do we have for them to get started? Because you've built the trust, you've paid for this lead to come in probably.
Yeah.
So that's where reviews oftentimes fits in as like a no-brainer start. For the person that's not ready to commit to the first class offer or something that's in between, we could start with a review and reputation management with them, get our foot in the door, show them that when they pay us money, that we get a result, and within 30 days be able to go back out there and do another playbook for them and say, okay, now that we got this part taken care of, let's go ahead and ascend you through the rest of it. Most agencies, they just have half-built value ladders, right? They've sold a hodgepodge of services, this and that. But it's like, why can't all of your services be sold to all of your clients, right? And it's a matter of, like, we're happy. We high five for the small stuff because we know there is a clear-cut ascension path through the rest of their services. Most businesses in general, agencies are no exception, don't have a very clear ascension path through their service line and a methodology of how to get those folks who are on the small end into the big stuff.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I really like that. With the time we have left, I want to get your guys' opinion on high level. How are you using it? How are you teaching your students to use it? And what's the future of SaaS plus agencies in your mind?
Yeah. Well, we're kind of high level newbies, right? Like there's like a lot of folks out there that are way more experienced with that. And so we've had just a very little experience into it, but it's a very fascinating platform for sure, because, it makes, and the pricing model and the value proposition's just pretty insane, honestly. And it's like, I could see it being hard to beat, getting in there and, having the ability to have all of your clients in this one ecosystem and being able to, we're recurring revenue guys. So that aspect of it makes a ton of sense for agencies, right? That there is this platform by which you can not only charge recurring revenue, but also anchor your other services to that as well. So I think it's really fascinating. I would definitely not call us the experts in high level at this point, but it's something where, the ability to deploy some of the marketing strategies inside of the agency itself, like that's probably where we've seen the most uptake with that for us and the folks in our community, being able to drop in, a complete, lead funnel and a complete, webinar or, entire, we write email marketing campaigns for all of our students, so that way they don't have to think about it and be able to drop those in there. So it's it's definitely an interesting opportunity for agencies, and I think that you'll see us play around with that even more than we have so far.
That's great. One more thing, and then I'll let you guys. I know you have like some freebie, I think, to give away to the audience, which I really appreciate. How do you generate your leads for AnchorWave and actually get on that initial discovery call that you talked about?
Yeah, so we definitely love having multiple lead sources and, multiple diversified lead sources that are predictable. And I would say AnchorWave was originally built on in-person networking. I think that's just because of how old it was, right? And that's the way that Mike got business. Yeah. He was out there shaking hands and going to mixers and breakfasts and chambers and, that stuff kind of never changed, right? And over time, we obviously started adding online stuff. So, SEO is definitely something. We do run, paid traffic as well. I would say my favorite when I worked in sales at AnchorWave was what I called strategic alliances. And that was just identifying other companies who had shared the same audience as we did, but didn't offer competing services, right? So like an IT company, how many people go to their IT company asking for a website? They don't want to do that, right? But they need somewhere for that to go. So being able to maintain a relationship like that, I mean, for a long time, that was probably my number one, if not only lead strategy that I was using, because I had a good person in all the different categories like commercial printing, a business lawyer, CPA. My favorite one is a business coach. Somebody's paying this guy for advice on what they should do. And if he says, my advice to you is to go fix your online presence and here's AJ's number, guess what? Like that is a slam dunk. And so fostering those relationships is super key. It's not hard. I mean, if you called somebody and said, hey, I help a lot of businesses. A lot of times they're asking me for insert whatever they do, and I don't have a good person to refer that to. Would you like to do lunch? And, I'd love to ask you some questions and see if maybe you're somebody I could send these to. If you do that, they're going to reciprocate, right? It just happens that way. And if you continue to nurture that, then you'll get some really hot lead flow that way.
Yeah. So like that's a traditional approach, and some of the more online based strategies. Like so, everyone that we talk to, everyone feels like they have a lead problem, right? That just need more. If I could just get more leads, everything would be better. And I think that most people don't have a lead problem; they actually have a nurture problem, because there is a ton of leads out there, and they're easy to get. And so our philosophy on lead generation is, bringing leads in through paid ads, or even the strategic relationships like AJ's talking about. It is a straightforward mechanical process, right? But remember we were talking before about the clients saying that the leads suck, right? The leads are bad. Well, agencies do the same thing, but they call it something different, right? Their leads suck. And there's tire kickers and people are wasting their time and all this kind of stuff. It's because they haven't nurtured their leads. And most agencies and most businesses in general run on hot leads. That's just the way it is. Word of mouth. Yeah. And the thing is that you have to have a system for warming up your leads. You have to have and you shouldn't be thinking about it every day. It should happen automatically. And the agencies that know how to warm up their own leads will have as many hot buyers as they could ever want. Right? Yeah. And that's the key thing. And so if an agency is struggling with leads, the first place I would look is say, well, do you have existing clients, right? You have gold in your backyard, go back there and ascend those folks. That's number one. Right. Number two, then, is for all the other people who don't know you or just kind of casually, they download a lead magnet or they opted in for something. You met them at a networking event. What are you doing every week, maybe even every day, to nurture those folks? So that way they become aware of what you do. And our philosophy on nurture is, this is kind of like borrowed from Gary Vaynerchuk's like jab, 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 right hook. We call it feed and fish. Feed, fish. Value, offer. Value, offer. Right. I would also bet the agencies that are struggling with leads are probably not making offers to their list either, or they're making too many offers. That's all they're doing. Right. So give value, make an offer. Give value, make an offer. Right. And what's crazy is a lot of times the value emails are the ones that turn into people raising their hands. It's counterintuitive almost, but you're like, guess what? Like, I'm giving value. This person wants to reciprocate it. And so if somebody has a lead problem, I would definitely look at your own client list as the number one spot for opportunities. And then number two is, what are you doing to nurture the lead? Because the agencies that win are the ones that know how to warm up their own leads, because then they'll have as many hot buyers as they could ever want.
Love it. Thanks so much for coming on, guys. We're out of time. Where can people find Mike and AJ if they want to work with Agency Coach?
Awesome. And if you head over to agencycoach.com/Keaton, we'll have a couple things on there. Certainly I think our Instagram profiles will be linked up on there. So come say hi if you have questions about what we talked about today. Love to chat with you there. And we also will link out to the review and reputation management training that we've got on that. So you guys can see that kind of foundational piece of the playbook that we talk about, which is, how do we get people a quick win, get them raising their hand, asking for help, and become an ascension point for everything else. So we'll link those two things up. I think that'd be a great spot. And if there's anything else you're like, oh, that'd be cool, I want to know more about that, set me up on chat. Be happy to help.
Cool. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye.